Welcome everybody. I'm Álvaro Loma from Shadowlands, and with me are two of the very most important person in this project, or in the world. I don't know, but in this project at least. And this is Kenneth Hite, hi,
Hey, thanks for having me.
and Gareth Ryder-Hanrahan.
Hello.
Okay, we are talking now with the two creators of this game of the Terraforming Mars game, which now we are trying to be well. It's already funded, but we are funding it with Backer Kit, and you can look at it right here. No, that's not the
It's a
the
whole different thing.
the uh, the other thing, this. I have two screens. I made a mistake. Okay, this is
That's more like it.
There we go.
the campaign. You
Look at that
can
number ticking up.
Yeah.
now you are saying the same as me. You are seeing it right, right? Okay.
Yeah.
hmm
So we are about to get the 300,000, and hopefully when this video we upload it, hopefully we achieve that. And you are going to, as you see, we are planning to make 7 books, but we are already funding the three first, the first ones. In fact, if you are a very anxious person, you can enter with the 7 books. You can buy it right now with, for example, the all-in Elite Terraformer pledge level. And we are very thrilled with all these projects, all these books, and we are going to talk about it with Gareth and Ken. So the first question is very obvious: is what is the Terraforming Mars tabletop role-playing game?
It's a role-playing game adaptation of the tabletop board game Terraforming Mars by Fricks. Uh, is it Frixilius? Fricks Studios?
Fricks Games. I don't
Fricks Games.
know how do you spell it.
Right. And that's a great board game. I've played it. I love it. And the goal is to sort of take that world that is created as you play that game and turn it into a world that you're playing a role-playing game about. And the challenge, of course, is to take a game that doesn't have magic and it doesn't have vampires and it doesn't have wizards and it doesn't have Cthulhu, and it's just a game about an actual great human adventure, which is to say, colonizing and creating another world. And that's should be pretty fun and interesting. And our job is to sort of drill down and find the fun and interesting at the table and bring it out and let people play with it.
And the plan is to have it differ from most role-playing games by emphasizing the generational aspect of it. You won't be playing just one set of player characters. You'll basically create one set, play a couple of adventures, move on to the next set, move on to the next set, basically exploring Mars through the years, through various regions, through different aspects of the setting, getting a bunch of perspectives on the way.
If you are not a role playing person, imagine you are not familiar with the role playing games, but you are a fan of the tabletop game. What do you should expect from this game?
I think you should expect a very transparent system. I mean, the Estirpe system is it's not very complex at all. It's very straightforward. It gets right to the storytelling. That's our goal as well. And the GM, the game master, should be able to, uh, with what we provide in the book, take any sort of challenge in Terraforming Mars, any one of the cards, for example, any project, and turn that into an adventure. And that might be a local adventure about something goes wrong when you're drilling the mohole, or it might be a sort of bigger adventure of you've got genetically engineered fish. How do you monetize them? Or you've got to move ice from Saturn into Mars orbit to get water onto Mars. All of those challenges could be, a few sessions, or they could be a dozen sessions, depending on, how excited you are with those characters and with that story. And the great thing is, if you think, well, the fish probably aren't going to keep us very excited for 2 or 3 stories, as Gar says, you're done. The fish guys, maybe they get pulled onto a different project, or maybe you're different guys who read about the fish guys in the corporate newsletter and say, well, that was a fun time, but we've got important lithium extraction to do, and that's what we're doing.
Got
The
it?
other thing, yeah, if you're familiar with the board game, then you can sort of think of yourselves, or you can think of the person playing the board game as the person who hands the missions to the players, because basically, right, we're going to crash an asteroid. Off you go and work out how to find the asteroid, how to attach booster rockets, how to guide it down to the right place, how to deal with the fact you just dropped the asteroid in the wrong place, and now it's a whole rescue mission because there's some miners trapped by the asteroid impact. Basically, the role the it's you're basically playing one level below the the players in the board game. You're the ones who actually have to implement the cards played by the board game players.
In fact, if you are a tabletop role-playing person, um, you can download the quick start kit from the campaigns page, and you can try the game because we have the all the system, the stripper system. It's in there. It's a little bit a little scenario written by Gareth itself, and you can check it out. It's easier for a person familiar with the role playing games, but you can do it. It's so there. You can do it for free, and then you should buy the book then. Uh, I want to make the opposite question. If you are familiar with the tabletop role-playing games, what do you should expect the same tone, the same uh, way of doing things that in a normal role-playing game, or this is something different?
Well, I think that it's going to be different in that the game is not mostly going to be about stabbing people or even shooting them. Um, Most role-playing games center on combat because they either, you're fighting vampires, you're fighting Cthulhu, you're fighting orcs, whatever it is. That's the core activity. You're not fighting, you're building. Your core activity is to build, to create something on Mars. And so that's going to be different and hopefully refreshing. And the notion that you have to solve problems, maybe politically, maybe you have to solve them scientifically, maybe you just have to gut them out. There may be fighting. There might be, a red Mars radical who's trying to stop you from, cracking that lithium out of the planetary crust. But mostly, what you're going to be doing is solving problems and then dealing with your own solutions in a creative and hopefully scientifically interesting way. And that's not something that happens in a lot of tabletop games because they're about other things. And ours is, I think, one of the first ones that's actually sort of deliberately not about that because it's really about, creating these projects and changing the face of Mars more than it's about any individual fist fight you may or may not get into.
The other thing, because you'll basically be creating like several bunches of player characters one after the other, it'll allow for you to set up some very interesting group dynamics. In a regular role playing game, you want the whole group to pretty much get on. If you're going to be playing the paladin and the thief for 50 sessions, then the paladin and thief might argue a bit, but you don't want them to be at each other's throats. With here, if you've got if you do go to these characters for 3 or 4 adventures, you can set up some much more intense interpersonal dynamics because you know that you'll play through that relationship, you'll have that screaming fight or that like doomed romance or whatever on Mars, and they move on to the next set of characters who have their own a different dramatic setup. So
Yeah.
the like
So
this sort of yeah.
yeah, so the intensity of the human story can
Mm,
be more intense
mm,
because, as Gar says, you can tell the most important story about this little group of characters and then move on to the next group of characters.
mm,
And that might be the ecologist and the geologist never getting along, or it might be, as Gar says, a doomed romance, or it might be, a noble sacrifice. Like, we have to get the solar mirror online. I'll stay out in orbit, even though I'm out of oxygen,
mm,
and move it in myself. And that becomes an important story that you can tell without hosing yourself for the whole rest of the campaign. Because, yeah, you've got the solar mirror set up. Good for you. And now you're playing the next bunch of characters who have to do something else. And that's a real opportunity, I think, for making play super enriching and super interesting. And and then everything that you do builds into this sort of big tapestry or this big mosaic of Martian change and terraforming.
What is the aspect of this game, of this project, which is more thrilling for you?
Um, Personally, I mean, I'm really interested in the whole sort of like building up the story generation by generation,
Hmm.
um, and the idea of basically sort of creating your own problems to solve the next step. Because like as you solve each challenge, you create complications and ramifications and so forth, and then your next characters could be either dealing with them or even like be totally opposed to the actions of previous characters. You could like switch from being the guys who are setting up the solar mirror in orbit to the Red Mars radicals who are trying to take it down. Um, I like the idea as well that the GMs of the players could collaborate, like sort of pick what the next interesting thing is for them to play through, make it much more a collaborative game.
Yeah, and like I was saying, the challenge of creating a story that isn't about fighting or
Mm-hmm.
isn't
Hmm.
about physical combat anyway, plenty of fighting, um, becomes a challenge as a designer, because what we have to do is make sure that a scientific project, exploration, construction, exploitation, whatever it is, has to be as interesting and challenging as, turning a corner in a dungeon and fighting an ank egg or whatever. And that opportunity to make those stories as thrilling and exciting as they are in real life at the table is, I think, a challenge that'll is pretty new to game design. And I think Gar and I are both pretty stoked to figure out
Mm-hmm.
ways to do it. And then also ways to provide the GM with the ability to sort of follow on with those ramifications, as Gar said, to sort of everyone builds the story towards excitement, but with sort of acknowledging and being affected by what went on before, so that your Terraforming Mars campaign is always going to be different from someone else's because you did different things at each stage and during each generation. And maybe you screwed up the solar mirror, or maybe your solar mirror is great, but whatever that is, that
Hmm.
changes the game, that impacts story and adventure and possibility going forward. And that's going to be really fun to be able to sort of present and then allow GMs to use and player groups to use at the table. I think that there's a lot of challenges just in terms of things that other games have sort of hand waved or not really dealt with. I mean, even Star Trek games don't usually have scientific challenges. They wind up being actually about the giant space amoeba or whatever. And so
Mm-hmm.
the notion to be able to do that, I think, is really thrilling to me as a designer.
We are in the crowdfunding campaign. We unlock 50 stretch goals or more. I don't really have the number, but some of that stretch goals talk about the generational module set. How is that? It's like rules to make the next generation of PCs, or what is?
Basically, yeah. I mean, basically, each generation is different group player characters. They can either be like the actual descendants of your current group, or like other people work at the same corporation, or
Hmm.
they work for a different corporation that's somewhat connected to the previous group. There'll always be some sort of thematic or story-based link between generations, so it's
Hmm.
all part of one campaign, but there's interwoven threads in the tapestries. Um, as to what's going to go in the various modules, they're still to be written, so to be determined. But we want basically this game to be. I mean, it is a different sort of role playing game in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
So we want to basically provide as much support for the GM and players in playing the style as we can.
Hmm. Kenneth, no, I don't know if you have something to add.
No, I mean Gar pretty much nailed it. We haven't written it, so we don't know what's in it. And the notion
But
of a
it's like three module. I think is like three ways of relating the old characters with the next one or something like that, right?
it's basically it's about what are the sort of standard what do I want to say, background situation and how that mechanically affects play. So
Hmm.
in a Mars with atmosphere, rules are going to change for everything in terms
Hmm.
of what can you do outside, how long can you go and do stuff. A Mars that has cities on it instead of little outposts is going to be a Mars where we're going to need more political rules and more rules about what's going on Mars versus what's just being decided back on Earth by the Mars Authority. And so those sorts of changes are going to be sort of changing the nature of the game as you play it. It's the first game is going to be a lot of exploration and a lot of being the first person to do something. That's the first generation. The next generation is going to have resources that the first generation just didn't because the Hohmann transfer orbit is going to be set up. You're going to have rocks and ice coming out from the outer system. We're going to have outer system colonization start up in second or third generation. I forget which one. And that's going
Hmm.
to be its own set of rules. Maybe you'd rather just go out to Saturn and play guys wrestling ice moons and dealing with that stuff. Uh, that's its own thrilling, exciting thing. Maybe you're asteroid miners. Maybe we turn it into a prospecting subsystem, depending on what generation uh, the outer system exploitation comes in. So it's going to be, each game is centrally about Mars, but there's very Mars changes because that's the point of the game, and then where you're doing things is also going to change potentially, and that's going to have to go somewhere. And I think those generational rule sets are where they're going to wind up going.
Um, anytime, every time you talk about something to do in Mars is like you can do a mole, you can do the ice asteroids or whatever. Uh, every one of that items is one of the there are cards in the tabletop game which are made exactly that. So my question is, you are planning to use the cards or as inspiration or anything else for the tabletop role playing game?
Yeah, I mean, there'll be there as inspiration. You won't need the board game to play the role playing game, but the plan is you'll be able to pick up any card from the board game and go, okay, how can I convert this into the role playing game and have basically a set of tools and plot elements to be able to basically plug in and go, okay, your project is to uh, build a new fusion reactor on Mars. Here's the various challenges the players have to overcome with that. Here are problems we can throw their way. Here are obstacles. Here are whatever opposing forces there might be trying to stop them or sabotage them or just object to this. Here is like, where are you getting the helium-3 to fuel the reactor? Um, where are you building it on Mars? Basically, uh, the cards in the book will be a starting point for the project, but they sort of build in the challenges around that.
Mhm.
If you think of each card as a project, then each card becomes a potential scenario. So in theory, if you wanted to, as the GM, you just sort your cards out. You say, this is the first era on Mars. These are those cards. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Boom, here's what we're doing. Boom, here's what we're doing. Boom, here's what we're doing. That can, add sort of randomness and excitement to play if that's what you want to do. Or
Mhm.
you can plan it out and let people pick. or a mix, right? Every player gets to pick one card and then the GM decides the other cards. So what cards do is just sort of make tactile the notion of these very, open collaborative uh, campaign structures so that you can use them or you cannot use them. But our goal is that in theory, every card in the game could be a project in the tabletop game. And at the very least, we'll have guidance for adapting it if we don't have an actual project write-up for the mohole or a project write-up for the cracking plant or the project write-up for whatever.
When you are talking about projects and adventures and so, I insist you should go to the campaign page and download the quick start guide because there are an adventure written by Gareth, which it's pretty obvious how can just set. You have the mole hole side. Have to do that. So the project is separated in a series of challenge. You have to do the challenge one and then the other and the last one, and it's amazing how well it translates the projects in the tabletop game in the previous game in the original game. Um, do you think this is the most challenging part of the designing of the game, or there is something else that it's more challenging for you?
Um, I mean, the challenge. I mean, what's supposed you can't turn a board game into a role playing game directly.
Hmm.
Basically a role playing game is effectively a conversation. That's what it comes down to. It is basically I do this, the GM goes, no, yes you do, no you don't. Let's roll dice, whatever. It
Hmm.
needs a level of complexity interaction that a board game, which is much more focused on like numbers and the logic of the game, has. You need opposition, you need challenges, you need complexity, you need open-ended things the players can talk about and negotiate, and it needs decisions that don't come down to this is the good number, this is the bad number. Let's pick the good number. You need moral dilemmas. Um, so the challenge is going to be creating a system for generating that conversation and those moral dilemmas and those character moments that make it a role playing game as opposed to just a dice rolling exercise, which is basically replicating the board game.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
the challenge is also to make various adventures feel different and have different
Hmm.
structures. And that's the challenge of any role-playing game. I mean,
Yes.
one dungeon room is the same as the next dungeon room. One haunted house is the same as the next haunted house. One vampire cotillion is the same as the next vampire cotillion. You need to be able to change up what you do in order to make any role-playing game not have a sort of a feel of we've had this conversation. We're it's stale. We know what's going on. And I think because this is such a new area for a lot of role-playing games to explore, we have to really think about how do we make these conversations interesting and fun and make you want to have another one after you've had your last one. And that's the real goal and the real challenge. But it's the challenge I think that any role-playing game has. Anyone can come up with one cool thing. The trick is to come up with a way to do 60 cool things or 100 cool things or whatever. And that's, again, you look at something like the Great Pendragon campaign, there's a million things you can do in Pendragon. And we need to be able to have that richness of play available for Terraforming Mars. And I feel like that's, that's part of the thrill of doing this. If this was just another you're on Mars, but you're fighting vampires. Gar and I have kind of done that already.
yeah.
So
Although we want to do
this
it again,
is,
but that's
I
another
mean, yeah,
matter.
I'm not saying we're too good to do it. We'll do it a million times.
Yeah.
Call us. But the doing something different with the art form is, I think, kind of the real fun part, the real meaty part of this design for us.
The other challenge, which is going to be challenging, is because we're
To coin a
because,
phrase.
code of phrase, yeah, because it is I mean, relatively hard science fiction campaign. We get into like the plausibility of actually colonizing Mars at some point, if you wish. But like, there won't be aliens, there won't be psychic powers, there won't be like the technology is as plausible, relatively plausible for a lot of it.
Yeah.
There
No
won't be,
anti-gravity, no
yeah,
time machines, no
yeah,
Mhm.
teleporting.
no, yeah, exactly. No mustache twirling, well, they're a mustache twirling villain, but they're plausible mustache twirling
Right.
villains.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like with other role playing games, if you're stuck for something to do, you can go, okay, I will add this magic gizmo, this like prophecy, the supernatural element, and that is. I mean, I would call it a storytelling crutch, but I like I write lots of fantasy and like do lots of horror games. But you can always make something more interesting by sticking tentacles on it, and we're not going to stick tentacles
Yep.
onto this unless, well,
Mhm.
unless you do a project where you're engineering like intelligent octopi for the oceans of Mars, in which case
Right.
you're just like that's on you
You're
basically.
making your own problems and we can't
Exactly.
help you.
Yes. But you will then be able to play the intelligent octopi on the oceans of Mars as the next generation if you really wanted.
Right. If that was your goal.
Exactly.
We already said that there is going to be 7 books, but you only need one to play. In fact, you only need the Kickstarter route to play. But being a complex game that it is, I think that the first book is the only it's compulsory to play it.
Yeah.
But the other 2 books we are funding right now, it's a book of adventures, like little adventures, like some projects you
Yeah.
can use any of them, everyone, or only the one you want. And the other book, it's the Great Campaign of Mars. You already, Kenneth, you already said the Great Campaign of Pendragon, which is another game with talk about it and tell me what we are going to see in this Great Campaign of Mars.
Well, I mean, the Great Pendragon campaign is by Greg Stafford, and it lets you play out the entire course of the Arthurian legend
Mhm.
from the times of Uther Pendragon all the way through the creation of the Round Table, the quest for the Grail, and then the final battle where Mordred and Arthur kill each other and Camelot falls. And you do this story in generations. It takes place over most of a century in Britain, and it is one of the greatest campaigns ever designed. So obviously, Gar and I thought, let's rip it off. And what the Great Campaign of Mars will be is it will be the way that you can take your characters and your play group, and you can decide what parts of this generational multi-era story of Mars do we think are cool and fun. And so we know that at some point Mars gets an atmosphere. Mars becomes green Mars. Uh, that's baked in. What did your characters do as a result of that? Did you fight it? Did you help it? Did your previous characters do it and now you fight it? Um, all of it is about building your characters into this sort of generational saga, and you're building your own generational saga. So it's your story of what happened against this backdrop, and maybe you're intimately involved with the most important things, right? With that first bunch of ice asteroids slamming into the North Pole, you were the guy who did it, but maybe you weren't. Maybe you just heard about it because you were over on, Hellas doing something entirely different. And that uh decision of how deeply to intertwine yourself into the core story is up to the player characters. What Gar and I will do in the Great Mars campaign is offer windows into all these sort of big, splashy, no pun intended, events, and then uh, ways to tell stories around that. And then you have your option of, yeah, we want to be part of that. We want to be, lobbying the main corporations and getting involved, or no, we think that's a terrible idea. We would like to try and stop it. And that's up to you, the player character, the player group.
Yeah, I mean, like when we did the Dracula Dossier campaign, and that like has lots of ways it can go, but it ultimately ends with you fighting Dracula. Similarly, there'll be lots of ways this can go, but end with Mars being terraformed. What that looks like and what the sort of final configuration is partly up to your players. So maybe it's a Mars ruled by a single corporation. Maybe it's a free Mars. Maybe it's this like wasteland full of nuked cities because you started a Martian civil war, or it's this utopia. Um, we'll basically give you as many tools as we can to build your own version of the of future history of Mars um, within this framework.
So where maybe some of our viewers is not familiar with the Dracula Dossier, but Dracula Dossier it's like an improv campaign where you have a lot of NPCs, a lot of localization, and a few timelines, and you can mix it out to make your own story. This is going to be like that, or this is going to be more like the Pendragon campaign where you have like a one timeline and you can put your own events on it.
Well, we're going to try and do the sort of best of both,
Yeah.
where Great Pendragon campaign for the structure and for the incredible economy with which that demonstrates what a story is and can be, and then Dracula Dossier for the improvisation and the collaboration. So there's going to be a bunch of NPCs that you can slot into things. So there's always going to be a jerk from Earth, and maybe he's the jerk from Earth in the exploration time, or maybe he's in the Green Mars era. But jerk from Earth is a pretty standard character type, so you'll be able to slot that guy in. Similarly, grizzled old prospector, we're going to have one of those. Every kind of character that you can think of that you might want as the GM, and their agendas can change. We're going to have that maybe modular aspect of it. Do they work for your corporation? Are they against your corporation? Are they anarchists who don't even like corporations on Mars, God forbid. And that sort of uh, modularity is hopefully what will let you customize your game to exactly the kind of Terraforming Mars campaign that you want. So my Great Mars campaign is going to be different from yours, is going to be different from someone else's, because everyone's picking these elements and interacting with the story in different ways. And even if you wind up, having the same basic storyline, what's going to give it flavor is your character groups making character decisions, as Gar says, their moral dilemmas, their personality conflicts, the sort of the human juice of the story, and that can come a little bit to the fore in a game where humans are the only important thing, and we're not worried about, monsters and demigods and other nonsense.
We have well, there is another crowdfunding campaign being right now for Gareth Ryder-Hanrahan Ocean Game. The Ocean Game. Southlands is making the graphic part of this book, and I had a copy of the book, and I checked it out. I read it, and it's amazing for me. I want to tell you that for me it's the best book, role playing book I have ever read. It's amazing. I love it from the start to the last page. I was like uh, eating it like it's amazing. So congratulations, Gareth. It's
Thank you
amazing
very
that.
much. I mean,
Uh,
that was a very interesting project to work on because Dave Alsop, who did a lot of the book publishing horror back in the day, basically wrote a manuscript for Pelgrane that sort of sat in a drawer for like 15 years.
hmm.
And then I went to develop. So it's sort of like a sort of found footage horror game almost, where basically you're like you try to work with this strange artifact that has been handed to you.
It's
Um,
completely opposite of
mm,
everything in 34 Maps. And
I,
that's interesting for me because uh, when you when you watch your previous games, you can watch like some path you are doing as co-designer and as designers
Mhm.
on your own. Um, for me, it's very obvious to see how Chulu City impact on Ocean Game, for example,
Mhm.
on Dracula Dossier, on the Great Campaign of Mars. And do you think when you are doing any project, you are always thinking on the previous project, and how do you use that knowledge to make the next one, or is like no, I have to start from scratch?
I mean, I did two Star Trek games back to back. Gar did the Mongoose edition of Traveler basically single-handedly. Both of us have science fiction gaming chops, and I think both of us will be thinking about those, but we're not going to go back and reuse bits of those designs because they're not relevant to what we're doing now.
Mhm.
So to some extent, it's uh we've thought about generational gaming before. We've thought about um the sort of notion of an isolated scenario structure that you can, you know, uh 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 prefab
Yeah.
build out at the table. We haven't had a chance to really work with those things in this way, and that's always going to be the change. I mean, you never want to just retread old ground because then you're sort of boring, and also you bore yourself, which is vastly more important. um but we're not, we don't like have our brains scrubbed like in Severance and then just come in and write the game de novo. I think that the whole reason you get someone like Gar or me is because we do have this sort of legacy of having done a lot of design and a lot of writing of role-playing games, and we're going to be informed by best practices from everything, even from things that don't seem to immediately seem relevant to Mars, just because we did it, in Dracula Dossier, or we did it in Zoology Quartet, or Gar did it in Traveler, or I did it in GURPS or whatever. And that's just the sort of the bonus of having old hands like us working on the project. But I think every challenge it has to be new and it has to be interesting. You have to treat it that way because otherwise, my God, imagine what a horrible life you would live just rebuilding the same dungeon endlessly.
I mean,
Yes, but my question is more like, do you think on, okay, I made that, and now I want to evolve that, mixing it with, I don't know, with Dracula here or whatever. It's more like the creative process is more like that, or is more like, no, I have to make it from the start, and I have this knowledge, and of course I'm going to use it, but I want to use like a fresh start. Is I don't know if I'm doing the correct question, but it's more like that.
yeah, I don't, for me anyway. I mean, I think both Ken and I tend to approach role-playing game design from a fairly traditional perspective, as in we're not trying to do a story, really trying to do a story game where like, we stick to like there's a GM, there's players, the GM presents a challenge, the players respond to that challenge, sort of like Gaxian structure. And I think that's the starting point for most or all of our designs, I think. And the question then is which of the tools we built up over time is most appropriate with this particular setting, this particular design brief. I'm not sure if there's a sort of like a sort of linear evolution of like okay, I like assemble these tools, I will use them again the next one. It's like whatever you take what works from the past, but you don't. What's the best way to phrase it? Each each game starts with the same very basic assumptions of what's going on. It has to basically be playable at the table, entertaining for the players, entertaining for the GM. It has to be a fun, challenging, interesting, emotive experience, and then you grab whatever tools are appropriate to that. I mean, it's I think basically there is a way to do a role-playing game
Mhm.
which works, and it's finding this spot within that design space, as opposed to like a novel where there are many, many, many ways that work, and you can it's a different design challenge. I don't know, Ken, am I babbling? I think I'm
I
babbling.
don't know. I mean, we've got two answers to the same question,
Yeah.
so I feel like if you sort of stereopticon them, you must be getting somewhere.
Okay. How is your workflow? You are how are what you make this like because I am a designer myself and I'm not used to work with another designer. It's hard for me to think in this way of doing things. How do you work?
Well, the secret is that Gar is really, really good. So here's the problem that you may have had is you may have worked with bad other designers or mediocre
Mm.
other designers or only sort of good other designers. The trick, and I've done this before, is to work with really, really good other designers. And when you do that, it's much better. Because you can say something like, I think something like this should go here, and then you go to bed, and then you wake up the next morning and Gar has done it. And it's remarkable how good that works. I'm not sure how Gar thinks it works, but I think it worked great. So our flow is usually we sort of at larger or smaller length talk out the sort of things that we're talking about here. What do we need? What does the game sort of need to look like? What shape are we trying to build? And then usually I will write up a sort of a first cut at it, and then Gar will shake his head sadly and do it right. And then we will, from that point, say, okay, can you do this? Gar do this. And then we just sort of swap and remain in constant contact over Slack. So that we're always at one point saying, oh, check out this neat thing. Oh, this is cool. Oh, this is going to screw us if we don't deal with it now, and we're always sort of doing the checksum on each other. And so a lot of it is really just the sort of implicit trust that I have in Gar that anything that we identify as a problem, Gar can respond to correctly. And I'm not sure again what Gar gets out of any of this, but for me, it's just the fact that there's someone who thinks as well as I do, who writes as well as I do, if not better, and who has the same understanding of what needs to happen at the table. And I think really it's just, we have a really, really similar way. Everything Gar says about what needs to happen at the table is what I believe. And we're simpatico in that way. And maybe that's part of the key as well. But I seriously, virtually all of it is that Gar is amazing. And that makes so many problems go away.
Ken is far, far too kind. I mean, I think the other sort of secret sauce is then Ken coming along once I've made my sort of like, second tier pass and punching it up a level or multiple levels and having a fantastic way to sort of grasp the whole project and I see where it needs to go. Like I can get like, you give me a header, I can delve into that header, but it's this like the overall structure. I mean, like for Dracula Dossier, which is sort of the biggest thing we've sort of worked on together, or sorry, that's the thing. That if you look at the original outline for that, is this absolute like visionary idea, like here's the very very basic structure of how the campaign must go. Here are all the ingredients to plug into that. And similarly here, I think we're sort of like, this is a bit more back and forth on the outline stage as opposed to Ken coming down with these like sort of sacred tablets from Mount, what was it?
Mount Sinai.
Yeah, but
Well, this would be Olympus Mons, right? That's what I
this
got with my
this is
sacred
really
tablets.
I was trying to think of like Dracula's mountain.
All right, yes,
Yeah,
Dracula's Mountain,
we found like 11 of them.
Mount
So
Kulianu or
yeah, exactly,
Kalamanu.
indeed.
Yeah, yeah, we found so many mountains in that. hard to narrow it down. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, but again, part of it is that what works when Gar was, 10 years less experienced when we were doing this kind of thing for Nice Black Agents, Gar has become even better than he was then, and he was freaking great then. So it's not my place to come down off the mountain with tablets and say, "You do this, Gar." Gar gets to be up on the mountain with me, looking at the promised land and saying, "What do we need to do? How does this need to look? What can we do in play?" Gar has, run tons of games. He's played tons of games. He's read tons of games. I mean, it's not my, transcendent genius that is pointing this game anywhere. This is Gar and me, at the jump, figuring out what we need to do and working out how to get there and what, there's a lot of, we know this, a miracle occurs here.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out that part before we are even at a position where I then write the sort of vision document or whatever else, assuming that I even write it. I mean, at this point, it may be Gar and Ken bang it out together, and that would be great too. But my history of collaboration with Gar is a history of me doing less and less necessary work and Gar doing more and more necessary work as Gar just gets better and better and better. And Trail of Cthulhu, he began with my game, but he definitely came at it with his own approaches and his own ideas and changed things. We talked about what needed to be done, but I didn't have to write him a direction at that point. He just sort of went out and made it better. And I think that that's sort of what we're doing here, is we're saying we know what we want, we know what it needs to feel like, we know what it needs to have. How do we mechanically, in terms of words on a page, get it from our heads into a GM's head or into the player's heads? And that's always the trick. And it's just that, I think we have very similar design sensibilities, and the secret is just we always stay in communication,
Yeah.
and we each have, I think, pretty a pretty strong respect for the other one. So if someone else, if Gar did something, there's a reason, and I have to figure out that reason if I don't know it. Similarly, if I'm asking for something, Gar knows there's a reason. It's not just me being weird.
Yeah.
And so that sort of mutual respect, means that in the one time out of 25 that we actually butt heads, we're doing it to decide which great idea we're using, not which of us is right, because we're both right. It's just which one is the one we want to deal with for the rest of the project.
The other advantage is, because I've been reading Ken's stuff for many, many years. We've similar tastes in a lot of stuff. We've at this point a sort of shorthand library of references and so forth that we can so we can communicate fairly efficiently. And if there's something that we that only one of us knows, we either summarize it for the other person, or can go off, read this, and this, because Ken has read everything.
How the testing part of the game? How do you make it? Like, okay, Kenneth, you are going to make a game with your friends, and you are going to test, and then we are going to talk about it, or is more like something with a structure or scientific structure of any kind?
I mean, playtesting is usually something that one of us will do with our home group a little bit, but by now we're pretty good at knowing what's going to work at the table. And to some extent, Shadowlands is going to be doing some playtesting. Obviously, there's people who I know are saying, call on me when you need playtesters. So I assume that once we have sort of an alpha manuscript, it'll go out to playtest, and then we'll bring that on board as we finalize the core book, and then we'll take those insights into the Great Mars campaign to say, no one ever wanted to genetically engineer fish. I don't know what's wrong. It's such a great idea. And so maybe that becomes, not a main strand of the new campaign. But it's, playtesting is sort of ongoing. There's sort of thought playtesting as Gar and I think, would this ever work at our table? And if the answer is no, we just don't put it in. And then there's maybe, one of us runs one scenario for their group and says, what do you think? And gets sort of an immediate telemetry, but it's more of a ping than it is a
Yeah.
playtest.
I mean, playtesting is kind of a weird art. I mean, for something for like some games, there is too many options for like any one playtest to be useful. Like if it's something like a scenario, yes, you can play through it and go, okay, that playthrough worked. For something like Dracula Dossier, which is the whole modular setup where you can go in many different directions. One playtest, like I ran home game of it. I'm not sure if Ken, you ran some bits of Dracula as well. I think. I mean,
A
also
little
you ran
bit,
like
yeah.
millions less occasions, but that doesn't tell you a huge amount because you're going, okay, this one route through the maze exists, but there are like 10,000 routes through.
Mhm.
Similarly, for a new game like this, home playtesting will tell you that I can run the game or Ken can run the game, but we need everyone to be able to run the game. So that's you want people to sort of hand it to people and go, right, have we like condensed our approach to the game and our thoughts on the game into text other people can absorb and use?
Okay. I have one more question, and I think it's a silly question, but I want to ask it. What do you think if you imagine you are in Mars? What do you think you will be doing there? For me, I think I will be dying in like in a wasteland or something like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I don't know if you've read, but there's no air on Mars. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I would
Yeah.
be choking to death on Mars. Um, but assuming a functioning Mars colony, and my God, imagine how robust a Mars colony must be to need a doughy game designer. Um, I feel like, the fun thing in the old Westerns, right? There's always the guy that runs the newspaper, and he's there, and he's talking to the gunfighters, and he's getting in the way of everything, and he maybe writes the dime novel about what happened afterwards. I think that's my job on Mars, is I'm the guy that runs the newspaper, and is like there to sort of make the story sound exciting for Earth. And that's sort of my gig, to the extent. And again, no one needs me on Mars. That I would I'm the most ridiculous thing. You should be sending, I don't even know what, from Earth before you send me. Sofa cushions should go to Mars before I go.
In
But
fact,
if I am on Mars, that's my gig, is I'm the, sort of, oh yeah, tell us about the gunfight. Oh, there was no gunfight. You just put up a solar elevator. Fine. Tell me about that.
in fact, one of the stretch goals in the campaign, it's an actual newspaper. You from
I don't know
us.
if I'm right in that, but we'll see.
So I think it's I don't know. Your dreams will come true,
Oh
and
God, no.
and Gareth, in your case,
Oh, I don't know. Again, I feel that I have none of the skills that we needed for a putative Mars colony, at least in the
Gar, you're
early
just
stages.
vibing on the one-third gravity. That's what you're doing. You're just
The one
jumping over rocks all the time.
I'm falling over rocks.
Yeah. No, but that's the
No.
point. It's one-third gravity. You can fall all you want.
Um, one of the books that we've been reading is the Weeder Smith's City on Mars, which is a really good reference for all the ways that things go horribly wrong.
It's fun
Um,
ruining on Mars.
they put it on Mars, yeah. Um, but I think what will be an interesting part of the game and the Great Mars or Great Mars Campaign is so the politics of Mars and that sort of tension between Martian home rule versus control from Earth versus the corporations. Um, so I would love to be sort of dig into that in some way. Um, political system that work. It's a lovely thought.
You're a ward healer on Mars. We're gonna
Exactly. Yeah.
reinvent the machine. You're gonna be the Martian Daily.
Indeed. Local Mars
okay.
counselor.
Gareth Ryder-Hanrahan, boss of Mars.
Okay, now I have a very good news for you. So I'm going to share my screen again, uh, and we already make the 300 thousand stretch goal,
Oh, that's lovely charming.
Yay, good for us.
and
Hurrah!
also
Oh, sweet.
you
Yay!
already funded
Yay.
the Shattered Braille version of Fear itself with the Ocean game.
Excellent.
So it's a it's a it's a
A
very
good evening.
productive
Yep.
evening
Well
for
done,
you.
everybody. Well done.
You can go to Backer Kit, enter, buy the game, and you have a lot of pledge levels, and you can get only the PDF from the first book, or you can get the 7 books with
Fun
a lot of
collectibles.
stuff. I don't know because there is too
There's a
many
lot.
stuff
There's a
in
lot of
here.
stuff at this point.
Yep.
It's for all your life you are going to do stuff with it. So, Kenneth, Gareth, I'm thrilled to be you here. Thank you very much. Do you have anything else to say? Anything to want to say?
No, just that it's really great that we get to do this for Shadowlands. Obviously, Gar and I are really looking forward to the fun, the challenge, maybe a little less to the, oh, now we have to write about genetically engineered fish, but I think that that still will be fun in its own way. Yeah, so it's a great project, and it's a real, uh, I feel personally like it's a real way to sort of stretch some muscles that I haven't used for a long old while in game design, and also to maybe try and do something new and interesting. Gar says we're going to be very trad, but we're going to be doing things with this trad technology that maybe haven't been done with it
Yeah.
really, and that's going to be fun and interesting in its own way.
Mm.
Yeah. I when this first came up, I had dragged my old copies of Kim Stanley Robinson books off the shelf because I absolutely loved his Mars trilogy, and be able to sort of wander around in a similar space is really exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much to the two of you, and thank you to everyone who is watching this. Um, we have to say goodbye. Bye, and we'll see you
Bye.
later.